This week's podcast is sponsored by Sevenoaks Sound and Vision. We're running a large amount of Black Friday and Cyber Monday bargains this week. The deals go live at 1 minute past 12 on Friday the 24th of November, so head over to ssav.com to bag yourself a bargain. Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 20th of November. It's episode 201. And joining me in this edition, Assistant Editor Steve Withers.
Oh, I was just looking at porn.
News editor Mark Hodgkinson.
Wait a minute. You guys aren't the real Avengers.
Audio reviewer Ed Selley.
Can you summon an army of spiders?
And special guest star Mark Botwright.
Solid dude.
Some outstanding, truly outstanding acting there from the guys, as you're well done. Permission to jump in an X-Wing and blow something up.
Permission granted.
Thank you. That was a line in one of the new TV spots, and I achingly longed for him to say blow shit up rather than something up. I'm just thinking, come on, Star Trek can bring in the F word. Surely Star Wars can say shit. You know what I mean?
No,
I think Star Wars should create its own swear word like frack in Battlestar Galactica. That would be quite good.
Steve, you're either breaking up or you're really, really croaky.
That was my voice.
he is very old, Phil.
Yeah, I think he needs a drink of water, and it's obviously getting to that time of the year. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I woke up this morning. And
have you had your flu jab, Steve? Steve?
He's gone for his walk. Gone.
yeah, I was trying not to do a Donald Trump there. I put it on mute, drank my water, then came back.
Have you fallen?
Did you pull the cord to Jimmy, who's in the control room? Tell him you've fallen. Yeah, the new TV spot for this Last Jedi, and he says that to Leia, and he should have said that. He should have said blow some shit up, because blow something up it doesn't have the same feeling of anger, does it? Really? So
it also suggests that he's going to be entirely arbitrary. He might just, go blue on blue, or get really angry.
Brown on brown, by the sounds of it.
Yeah. I'm waiting on Mr. Butler. He's usually got a killer line about now.
Honestly, no. Sorry.
Put him on the spot there, didn't you?
Yeah, it's too early in the morning for him, isn't it? We were just starting. It's only 10 minutes past 10 on a Friday morning. Next Friday is Black Friday. Again.
According to Argos, it's this Friday. It started for Argos.
All right. Well, I think it runs for about 6 weeks, does it not?
Yes,
and actually, there was an interesting bit on BBC News, which they'd done some research on the last 3 or 4 Black Fridays. What they'd actually found was that the products bought on Black Friday were actually 10% cheaper when bought in December than they were on Black Friday.
I can well believe that.
Yeah,
I think everybody now has to do some kind of research, because no one believes that when it comes down to X amount off, you naturally go back to try and find what they've put it up by in the previous kind of 3 weeks or something, because nothing seems to be in any way heavily discounted in the way that it's advertised.
Yeah. I mean, it's the old trick. They've been doing it for centuries, salesmen, which is there's genuinely 1 or 2 absolute stonking deals, because they've maybe got 1 or 2 products that they can do that with, and once they are gone, they're gone. Everything else is a stock shifting exercise, and you're not getting huge bargains. If you're lucky, you'll get a major bargain if you're quick, and you get in there and you get the 1 or 2 items that genuinely are. The rest of the time, they're not losing money on it.
No, but let the poor people have their holiday.
let them fight.
The peasants run wild.
Throw money in the street. Here's some coppers.
I have to say that historically, for me at least, in the UK, I have found the normally less well advertised Cyber Monday has thrown up certainly better personal deals than Black Friday ever has. I bought a mobile phone with a good third off list price, and then last year I picked up an accessory for this laptop for not a lot of money. It's just that those sort of things, it's really weird. It's like actually manufacturers seem to put the effort in but then forget to tell anyone. So if you are looking for something, I would seriously have a look at what's being collated for Cyber Monday deals over some of the Black Friday ones. Some of those are actually really quite useful if you're shopping specifically for technology.
Yeah,
I'd have a little look at the LG B7, because that's dropped like a fucking stone since I've bought it.
Oh, shut up, Doc.
He's not better than anyway. He's not better than anyway.
Yeah, you can just sense that was actually just a very useful public service announcement, and not at all a shrieking cry of resentment against an unkind world.
Yeah. So yeah, you're better waiting to December, according to the latest research, which was on BBC News. And BBC, they're a good news source, aren't they? They're not fake news, are they?
Fake news. The best thing about things like Cyber Monday is you can do all the shopping without getting off your ass, can't you?
That's absolutely ideal.
That's a major plus
to be
point.
fair, we've done most of our Christmas shopping already, mainly because it was done online. But no, the thing is, I've already got my bargain of the month. It turned up unexpectedly. I found it unexpectedly online over the weekend. And
Was it vinyl related?
It might have been vinyl related, yes. I found a copy of Paul's Boutique by the Beastie Boys, an unplayed, not a first pressing because they are outrageously expensive now, but one of the represses from a few years ago, never been played, but it had been taken out of its shrink wrap, including postage. Got it here for under 20 quid. I am very happy with that. What an album! An album!
Good stuff.
Yeah. Really, really good. That's a conversation for another time when we really have run out of material. But I noticed, trying to drag this tortuously back on track, we've got a full and exciting running order compiled by Steve. So
probably for a change.
Let's have me talk about records.
Well, we were mentioning Black Friday and all the rest of it, and I think one of the things that's really disappeared from the high street, and they have to get a lot better at because of online sales and all the rest of it, is customer service. And I personally just had the best customer experience I've ever had in terms of a consumer. And it all spawned from the issues that I've been talking about over the months with the Mustang, having this intermittent fault that nobody could find, but which was dangerous. And when it happened, basically the car went into, it was some sort of limp mode and so on. It only ever happened now and again, really intermittent, and all the times that the car went back to the Ford dealer here, the local one, Lucas, they could never find the fault. And it came to a head this week because basically we were starting to go round and round in circles, and basically I asked for a resolution, and the resolution is, to cut a long story short, that they're putting me in a brand new car, even though I've done 12,500 miles since January in the one that I had. They're going to swap me over into, it's an almost identical, same colour, same spec, just slightly different wheels on the same deal. And it's cost me nothing to do that, because of this intermittent fault. And I've got to say, in terms of customer service, that's just unheard of these days, I think.
It's pretty impressive by all accounts. But by the same token, you always used to be, in the days when we communicated by phone and post, that you didn't get to see, that people didn't necessarily expand on their positive customer service experiences desperately well. I think the balance is evening out now over social media, forums, etc. Don't get me wrong, we're still far more likely to get up into a rage and spew bile all over them, but we are also likely to say when companies have done excellent work.
And I've got to say, you hit an important point there, Ed, which is that throughout this, I never once lost my temper or got angry with them, or even though I might have been frustrated and so on, and I give them plenty of opportunity to get on and get stuff done. And I think today's culture, where people automatically start shouting odds and their rights and all the rest of it, actually, if you approach the problem sensibly and you're open to letting them try and fix it, and if it ends up that there is no fix, then they then feel obliged, or more obliged, to solve the issue for you. If you go in shouting the odds right from the start and saying, I'm going to get my solicitor involved and all the rest of it, all you're going to do is get people's backs up, and you're not going to get the help that you need. So I think there's a bit of that, and I think, with social media the way it is and so on, I think there is a real lack of understanding, respect and patience these days. Everything has to happen tomorrow online nowadays, which is a bit of a shame.
Yes. Actually, if we're doing this on a much more minor level, in that case, I will also give a tip of the hat to Tesco, because I bought 2 of their finest pork chops, and really weird in so much as the Mark Hodge is going to be a better explain this. The actual rind on the edge of the fat hadn't been trimmed, which I thought was a bit odd, because generally speaking, I'm a Sainsbury's guy. The difference between the bog standard one and their taste the difference is that it's been properly trimmed and dressed, so you don't end up with a sort of gigantic.
The meat's no different. It's the same source of meat.
That doesn't look particularly different, if I'm honest. I'd be reticent to blind taste it. But it's just it preps a great deal easier and works rather better as a result. And I facetiously tweeted Tesco's, and they actually asked for some details, and they came back to me saying, "Yeah, we've looked at it. It seems legit. We'll have a look at trying to instigate trimming it, as soon as we can," which I thought was reasonable enough. So go them.
There you go. That's 2 consumer wins on the podcast this week.
Yes,
there we go.
Pork and Mustangs, the staples of life.
Pork and authors.
Yeah, well, look at it this week with pork chops, Mustangs, and Black Friday. We're turning into Americans, people.
Yes, the 51st state is here.
I managed to resist saying anything when you mentioned limp mode. It happens to us all occasionally, Phil.
There you go. It's only taken him 20 minutes to wake up, but there we go. Mark's back, people. Mark's back. Right. Seeing as you're back, Mark, what competitions can we win?
You're right. We've got 2 competitions closing on 13th of December. You can win a Dream Screen Smart backlighting kit and a Mio MyView C330 dash cam.
Any previous competition winners?
Yep. Huddy 72 won Batman vs. Two-Face on DVD.
Okay, so let's move on to something that we're supposed to talk about on this podcast, and that's hardware news. So Toshiba are selling its TV division to Hisense for $114 million. Doesn't sound like a hell of a lot of money when you look at a lot of acquisitions these days, which tend to be in the billions. But then again, Toshiba haven't really been making TVs outside of their home market in Japan for a long time now, Steve. They've actually sold the IP off to various companies. So what is it that's actually being sold this time around to Hisense?
Well, I think that they physically sold their entire physical TV. So it's not intellectual property right. It's actually the factories, the production plants, whatever they've got left. Not a lot by the looks of it. Has been sold to Hisense. But I am going to be curious as to see how this does affect existing deals, because only back in September they announced a joint venture with Vestel, certainly for the European market, to make TVs. Now they've sold their entire TV division to Hisense, so presumably that means that Toshiba's TV division and the name Toshiba now belongs to Hisense when it comes to TVs.
And hasn't Hisense got a deal with Sharp?
Yes, they bought the Sharp name in North America and South America, I think the Americas. So yes, they're it's quite a turnaround, isn't it? I mean, we've been talking about this a few times on the podcast, but you've got a few what were massive TV manufacturers in the past, like Sharp and Toshiba, who are now basically entirely closing down their operations and selling them off to Chinese manufacturers like Hisense.
I think Toshiba is an isolated case, though, Steve, in so much as the whole accountant scandal with Toshiba. The whole point, they're selling off the family jewels basically to pay the fines that they've been fined because of the whole debacle that went on in Japan. With the finances,
it's a drop in the ocean compared to the trouble they're in.
Exactly, yeah.
With the nuclear power station and stuff like that.
But this is them obviously selling off a lot of the family jewels to try and raise capital to try and offset a lot of these other issues.
Doesn't look.
They haven't sold all.
A bit fire sale.
Wasn't the sale for 95%?
Yeah, 95%.
So they clearly plan to be around for a little bit longer. They've kept
I think that might be to do with those licensing deals with the likes of
all right.
with Vestel, which I think are limited time and run out something like 2020 or something like that. So those licensing deals probably just will run their course.
But yeah, it's sad to see a company like Toshiba in so much trouble. Given there was a time, wasn't there, in the 80s when
back in the 80s,
they were synonymous with TVs.
Yeah, Toshi got a Toshiba.
Yeah, exactly.
It does seem weird that we've kind of gone from rebadging things being quite a kind of dirty word, and it would be almost like a bait and switch to put in a kind of cheaper version in a kind of more prestigious brand's general range down at the bottom end. In this one, you've got a decent name that's massively fallen from grace, and the Hisense sets are getting some good kind of feedback, some decent reviews. They're doing a lot better. So in essence, it seems like a pretty good deal all round.
Yeah, there's a lot of this going on. I mean, Samsung this year have mopped up so many different companies when it comes to consumer electronics, especially on the audio side, which gives you an idea of their intent, what they intend to do over the next few years, because big companies like that, they can't just focus on one area of the market. They focus across huge areas of different markets. And again, all these companies LG is a good example. You've got LG Display, which is a separate company to LG Electronics, which is different to LG Power, which is different to LG whatever. And at one point, I think they had a toothpaste company. So it shows you how many subsidiaries under one name there can be. So, and it's just getting that to the state now where if you look at the TV market, you look at OLEDs, they're all using one supplier there. All the manufacturers. If you look at the LED LCD TVs, there's quite a few panel manufacturers have closed down. So I think there's only 2 suppliers now.
Two major ones, yeah.
2 major ones. And this is the way the whole market is going to go, trying to keep costs down, but keep productivity and products high. But you're going to find that there's parts shared amongst most of the consumer electronics companies these days. Gone are the days where they would develop their own things in their own labs.
This has been recognised in areas of high technology for some time. I mean, it initially was most obviously seen in very specialist areas like space machinery, defense, and so on and so forth. But as stuff gets more and more complicated and the economies of scale required to make it cost effectively become more severe, you can't just have a medium-sized plant knocking out 4K high dynamic range fully licensed screens. It just coalesces and coalesces and coalesces. So you end up with a number of notional players in the game, but the actual pool from which they're pulling their hardware will get smaller. We've already seen it with things like computer processors and all sorts of other things. It's just it is the nature of things. It's not necessarily bad for the consumer, but it does start to restrict the amount of available sources that this machinery and equipment can come from.
I go back to my visit to Panasonic, which wasn't that long ago. I think it was 2011. And my visit there, I saw the huge plasma factories where the panels were made, where they cut the glass and so on and made these panels. And they were so enormous that a motorway actually ran through the middle of this site. I mean, that's how big. And I actually also went to the brand new IPS manufacturing plant, which had just been built and was running at full capacity. Within 12 months of my visit, both of those huge areas had shut down, stopped production. Like a brand new factory, which had only just opened 12 months previous, was closed down because they suddenly were not cost effective and not worth running anymore. And we're talking about huge areas of land and huge factories where they were churning out massive numbers of these things, and yet they still couldn't make money on it and had to close them down.
3 years ago, Panasonic were, I think, the 7th largest TV supplier globally, and now they're not even anywhere near the top 10. So they've dropped like a stone in that market as well. I mean, it's by design. They dropped out a bit to maximise profits, haven't they? But it just goes to show how volatile that market is, really.
So we mentioned Vestel in there. So they have announced this week that their TVs are going to get Dolby Vision, which is yet another big shot in the arm for Dolby Vision and Dolby in general. It's another thumbs up for their format. And interesting that we're talking about the level of TVs here, Steve, where the technology will really suit them.
Yeah, it's really interesting that they're going to be putting this into their lower tier models, because up until now it's been all high end TVs that have had Dolby Vision. But actually, where it really adds benefit is in the less capable displays, where the dynamic metadata can really help it deliver a more pleasing, more watchable HDR experience. So the fact that they're going to be doing it throughout their entire range, by the looks of it, is big news, because up until now, a lot of manufacturers, and I'm thinking of someone like Panasonic, for example, whose main reason for going with HDR10 Plus was they said, it was too expensive to get Dolby Vision and they couldn't use it in their lower tier models, and therefore it didn't add as much value as HDR10 Plus. But obviously Vestel have a completely different opinion on that. And I think this is interesting news, because it adds yet another manufacturer, and a big one globally, to the Dolby Vision camp. And as we were saying, I think only last week, if you look at people that support it and the content that's available already, Dolby Vision seems to be stealing a march on HDR10 Plus in quite a big way.
I mean, it might make sense for Vestel as a company not to put all that R&D into the processing, learning how to process it and make processors for it, and it might just be an off-the-shelf solution that makes financial sense. Well, you guess it is, if that's why they've done it.
Certainly makes sense, given the amount of work Dolby have done in this particular area over the last decade. that it makes absolute sense for if you don't want to invest the kind of money that would be involved, or you don't necessarily have the expertise you think you have, they just get Dolby to come in and do it for you. I mean, to a certain extent, that's what LG have done, and it's been very successful for them, hasn't it?
It is. It comes down to bodies in the game, and I think Steve's right. If another person comes down on the side of Dolby Vision, also rather undoing the arguments of some other manufacturers who haven't, it's quite a strong argument for them.
Yeah, I think it's now getting to the stage like HD DVD versus Blu-ray, like VHS versus Betamax, and so on. The pendulum's now swinging, I think, towards Dolby Vision, and I think anybody that doesn't offer that next year is the possibilities there is that they're going to lose sales.
It is pretty impressive how it's built momentum for what could have at one point was kind of seen as a quite a niche USP. Seems to have become well established in a relatively short space of time. Yes,
I would agree with that.
I think it's been marketed very well from the very beginning. Actually, I think they've marketed it as kind of being this great feature, but over the last few months, there's been a couple of key factors that have pushed its support. One of them being Apple using it on iTunes. That's a big deal. I mean, that's a big library of films suddenly available that wasn't before. Obviously, Netflix using it as well. Things like Stranger Things 2. And Star Trek Discovery being available in Dolby Vision has been a big push for its profile. Yeah. And then, in terms of manufacturers, there's been, I think, Vestel. Obviously, Vestel were involved before because Toshiba announced that they were using it at IFA, and that was in conjunction with Vestel. So maybe that was the beginning of that particular relationship. Whether Toshiba will continue to do so, it seems unlikely, given they're now going to be part of Hisense, who aren't supporting it. But even so, there's still a large number of manufacturers now supporting Dolby Vision. Yes, there's two major holdouts, which is obviously Samsung, who I don't think are ever going to do it unless they absolutely have to. And Panasonic clearly made a decision that they won't, but they've left the door open. They haven't said they're definitely not going to do it in the future. They've always said, it depends on how the market changes. So we might see them changing their mind next year if there's more momentum behind Dolby Vision. And also, if it takes, we'll see how quickly they can get HDR10 Plus added to the Ultra HD Blu-ray specs, but given that only one studio currently has announced any support for it, even then I don't think it would be particularly well supported.
Well, I mean, just look at how long it actually took 4K Blu-ray to come to market itself, and how long that took for them to decide on the HDR formats and all the rest. I mean, you're talking 18 months of negotiation and all the rest of it to get that in place, to then have it added to the product, to then get the product out there. You're talking about adding HDR Plus, okay, so you don't have to go through the whole process again, but you're talking about committees, and committees move in years, not months or weeks in terms of time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned after IFA that when I spoke to Panasonic, their guy who represents the Blu-ray division was very optimistic about having everything done by the end of the year in time for CES. When I spoke to the head of the Blu-ray Disc Association, he was saying, they're saying, what? Oh, I don't think that's going to happen. There's a lot of members of this association, and all of them have to agree. And that takes time. And he seemed to think that having it done by the end of this year was very, very optimistic. So we shall see, I guess, at CES.
So he's a bit like you when he says deadlines then. Yeah, it's all fantasy. Okay.
Sorry, can I just query something? Did you say Hisense weren't supporting Dolby Vision?
No.
No, you didn't, or no, they're not?
Oh, no, sorry. No, they aren't supporting Dolby Vision. They've said they're going to use HDR10 Plus.
Oh, right. Sorry, last I checked, there was a fairly decent set. I think it was only available on the American market that I could have sworn had Dolby Vision. Have they not put it in any?
They definitely toyed with it in the past. But when I spoke to them at IFA, they said, no, we're going HDR10 Plus with all of our TVs next year.
All right.
And also Quantum Dot. So they're kind of positioning themselves along with Samsung, basically, as far as their approach for next year is concerned.
Right, so that's Dolby Vision of Vestel. Let's quickly go through some more of these TV news for this week. And Harmony remotes and Sony TVs get Alexa voice control, Mark.
They do.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for that.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that, really. You can ask your television to ask Alexa to change your channels and change your input source and play this, play that. I was messing about with it. I haven't got a TV I can check it on, but I've got Plex on my Shield, and you can control Plex, which is a media software, front end and back end. You can use Plex voice control on Alexa to control plex in a limited way, and it's the most frustrating thing I've ever
Yeah,
seen.
well, you see, I'm Scottish, so I just stay away from these voice recognition systems altogether.
Yeah, you do have to be very explicit, because obviously it does it on the Sony TVs now, where there's a beta version of it, and I mucked about with it with the XE85. And as long as you're very clear and precise in your instructions with Alexa, it's all fine. But as soon as you just start using any kind of colloquialisms or vernacular, she starts losing the plot pretty quickly.
You're not supposed to use slang at them, Steve.
Yeah,
Just to be clear
tell
on
that
this.
to my wife.
My favourite sketch that it pops up on Facebook now and again, people repost it, is the voice recognition lift in Scotland.
Yes.
It is absolutely hilarious. If you've never seen it, highly recommend you go and hunt that video down. It's only like 2 minutes long, but it's they're trying to get to Florida living.
I still like the story, actually not a million miles from your neck of the woods, Phil, where Mercedes was doing its sort of global launch to representatives from various different countries, and it was the launch of the last S-Class, which had full voice implementation. It's like, we have tested this around the world. It's, we've done that weird, almost old English dialect off the coast of that island off the coast of New England. We've done all, we've been to the depths of the southern states and all sorts of places. And the bloke from Mercedes-Benz UK goes, "Have you tested it in Gateshead?" No. He goes, "Could you test it in Gateshead?" And it just completely and utterly was unable to cope with Geordie, requiring a substantial rework to the software. So, I think that's just great.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived here nearly 20 years, and I'm from Scotland, and I still don't understand the locals round here in the northeast.
It's a fantastic accent. I love it.
You'd never get a Geordie in the next series of Knight Rider.
It'd be entertaining, though. Right, so Steve, you mentioned the Sony XE85, not the EX85, but the XE85. And you've also got the Panasonic EX750, not XE750, but EX750.
Yeah, if I get through this piece without confusing those two prefixes, I'll be amazed. Yes, the XE85 from Sony, which is their kind of mid to low range TV. So sits below the XE90, which has got a direct LED full local dimming system. So this one doesn't have direct LED, doesn't have local dimming. But I got to say, so I went into it perhaps with limited expectations, thinking, well, I was impressed by the XE90, but this isn't going to have those features, so it'd just be an LCD TV. But actually, I've got to say, I was really, really impressed by it. I thought it was fantastic. You can get it for less than £1,000, so 55-inch TV for less than £1,000. And I thought, performance-wise, it was absolutely fantastic. It delivered a really nice picture. Uses a VA panel, so viewing angles are a bit limited, but you get good back levels. The shadow detail and contrast performance was really good. The colours was fantastic. A nice, accurate colour performance really popped off the screen. I was watching Blue Planet 2 on it, and was well impressed by the quality of the image it was delivering. So certainly, in daytime viewing particularly, it's a cracking little telly. And then even at nighttime with the lights down, the backlight uniformity was good, so it handled that as well. So I was genuinely impressed by this TV. I thought, wow, this I mean, I think Sony have had a good year. I think they've delivered some really cracking tellies this year, both in terms of OLED and LCD. And this was just a nice sort of cherry on the icing on the cake, if you like, with a really good mid to low end TV that also delivers a cracking picture performance. It has the X1 processor, not the X1 Extreme, so there's no Dolby Vision or anything like that with this TV. But even so, the processing was excellent. The motion handling was really good. The upscaling was excellent. And it's got Android TV. You can now control it with Alexa if you want. The remote control actually is different to the one that comes with the XE90 and above. So it hasn't got the really low form buttons and rubberized feel, which most people don't like. This is just a normal remote with raised buttons, which I actually much preferred. And I thought for the money, it was an absolutely cracking telly, and I was really impressed.
Cherry icing, what's that?
Yeah, I was going to say the cherry on then I thought maybe it should be the icing on the cake, right, with the cherry on top.
I just thought it was some new kind of icing that you get cherry flavoured icing.
You could. Presumably you can get any flavoured icing if you ask.
I don't know. I'm not allowed it, so I don't know.
No, don't
over to Hodge.
I don't know.
Not a pastry chef then.
Obviously, Hodgie's done his bit now. He's lost the will to live now. Well,
he really wants he wants his spot to get cup of tea number 2 underway.
We might hear from him by the end of the podcast when he says goodbye. Right. So also the Panasonic then.
Yes, the EX750, which, as far as I am aware, is the only new TV this year that supports 3D. So a bit of a rarity these days, the last of a dying breed. If not, I suspect there won't be any next year. But yes, the EX750 supports active shutter 3D. It's basically Panasonic's flagship LED LCD TV for this year, because most of their emphasis is obviously placed on their OLED lineup now. But yeah, it's got Edge LED backlighting, local dimming, 3D support, HDR, of course, HDR10, hybrid log gamma, and obviously they'll be adding HDR10 Plus at some point next year. Wide color gamut as well, support. And in terms of the image quality, as you would expect with Panasonic, nice, accurate image. Not as accurate out of the box as some of the other TVs that I've measured this year, but certainly with the calibration controls available, you can get an absolutely reference performance from this television. In terms of its SDR performance, very, very good. HDR performance, good in the sense that it's got good tone mapping and an accurate and wide color gamut, but not very bright. Only got 420 nits out of this TV, so actually pretty dim for an HDR television. So you're not getting the specular highlights you would get from a brighter TV, but otherwise actually quite a solid HDR performance. And obviously a good 3D performance, which is I think the main selling point of this TV. The only area where it perhaps dropped down a little bit was in terms of its motion handling, which was quite poor, surprisingly so. Even with IFC, intelligent frame creation, turned on, it still was quite juddery in the test with that scrolling pattern test, which surprised me. Obviously limited viewing angles because again it's a VA panel, but that means it does have good black levels and the local dimming is quite effective. The big downside with this TV for me is just the design. It just looks so old-fashioned. I mean, not only is it sort of 3D, which seems like about 4 years ago, but it looks like it was made about 4 years ago with a big chrome quad stand that you used to see on Samsung TVs and a wide chamfered bezel that again you used to see on. So basically, if you look at a Samsung TV from about 2-3 years ago and put a flat rather than a curved screen on it, this is what this TV looks like.
So it's not new. They discovered a large warehouse full of it. It's like, oh cock, we've got to do something with this, and kicked it out the door.
Sometimes it does feel a bit like that. Obviously, it isn't, because you can tell by the panel and everything else involved in it what it does. But there was a certain element of like, this feels like it. They just sort of dropped them in from 2013. It also weighs a ton, absolute ton. It's really heavy, and it swivels on its stand, which is another rarity these days. Again, something you haven't seen for about the last 3 or 4 years. You get it for £1,849, so it's not cheap. But not bad for
but they're using the
screen size.
Yeah, but at that price, Steve, it's retro. You see, this is why they're
Yes.
charging that money. It's a retro screen. See, I know.
I used the word retro in the review.
AVForums does marketing.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's a competent performer. It's not. I wouldn't say it's the best looker. It's reasonably priced for 65-inch screen size. And of course, it does 3D. So if 3D is important to you, that's the main reason you're going to be buying it. But I think otherwise, I mean, it certainly comes worthy of a recommendation for that basis alone. But in terms of competition, there is some pretty competitive TVs out there that deliver a better overall performance in terms of SDR and particularly HDR.
Okay, thanks for that, Steve. Right, so moving on. Ed's not going to talk about cars for at least 10 minutes while he talks about his NADs.
I'm going to talk about some NADs, yes. We don't review that many NAD. I've never quite worked out which one they actually want. Amplifiers. But one that we did look at not too long ago was the 368, and that was somewhere on the cusp of being switching over from being an integrated amplifier to being an all-in-one system. It did so much of its own processing and source work that you didn't necessarily need to connect anything else to it. And this appears to be a path that the company is pursuing in other areas. The 338 is less expensive than the 368. It's 600 rather than 800 plus, depending on which options you go for with the 368. And it's an integrated amplifier. You get a small number of line inputs, phono stage, and some digital inputs. But the big story, and why it's been brought to the attention of forum viewers, is that it is Chromecast enabled. It can sit on your wireless network or your wired network, and if you already have Chromecast and Chromecast enabled devices, it simply joins in that family of units, so you can shift audio to it in exactly the same way that you would any other Chrome enabled device in your group. And it really is quite an interesting one because it shifts over how you start using that product. I mean, in so much as obviously I reviewed it properly I connected other things to it and so on and so forth. But for the most part, I just found myself booting up Tidal and Chromecasting it to the NAD, and that was just the most logical and most comfortable way of using it. And it's very, very interesting because it's actually, if you like, it's two halves of a review set, because there's another £600 amplifier, which actually I just finished writing the copy for yesterday. Fun fact. Which is almost the complete opposite, in so much as it has no digital inputs. It wouldn't know what to do with a wireless network or a Bluetooth transmission. And it's, if you like, there's two radically different approaches to how you can spend the money. And contextually, which one is better for you is going to depend heavily on what equipment you already have. But for quite a long time, amplifiers have sort of ticked along as a stable product category, whilst the things that you plugged into them changed dramatically. It's now their turn to do some quite dramatic changes, and the NAD is a great example of that. Sonically, I thought it, the review will give you more of the details, but sonically, I thought it was a pretty enjoyable listen. I'm not blown away by the aesthetics, but anyone that is blown away by the aesthetics of a grey box, you have different priorities to me. But this, to me, looking at the way that a number of forum members now listen to music, consume audio, and so on and so forth, this just struck me as a particularly clever product for a number of people, and I think NAD should be congratulated for trying something a little bit different with it.
Wow, that was 7 minutes on topic.
I know, that's it now. By the way, I'm a spent force.
You're now in limp mode, are you?
I am in limp mode, yes.
Right, okay. I think that's enough for hardware this week, and we'll be back in a sec with some movie news.
If we're taking suggestions for possible future content, can I put in my vote for Ed's blind taste test of pork chops?
Rind on.
Yeah.
Christmas is going to be surreal, isn't it?
Do you not own a knife?
Have you tried?
Buy some kitchen shears, Ed. Buy some kitchen shears from Amazon.
Unfortunately, I don't have a pair, because trying to do it with a knife, Steve, is impossible.
We'll wait for Black Friday and see if they pop up on Amazon.
I'm going to send you a link after this podcast. My kitchen shears are fantastic.
Thank you. That would be appreciated.
Can we do movie news now?
No, we're on pork.
I don't rate pork anyway in Britain. Shit.
Right, Steve, do you want to review Paddington 2?
Yes, Paddington 2. Sequel, obviously, to Paddington, which was a bit of a surprise.
Does he eat pork at all?
No, he predominantly eats marmalade.
Right, okay. Cool.
In sandwich form. He is forced to eat some other things too in the film, but not pork, as far as I'm aware. I'm not saying he doesn't like pork. I mean, he's a bear. They're omnivorous, right? So he probably would eat pork. But in the film, it's mostly marmalade sandwiches. The original film was a big surprise, because I've got to say, personally, I didn't really like the look of it in the trailers, but I absolutely loved it when I saw it. It was charming and funny and had a lovely positive message about immigration and inclusiveness and tolerance. So unfortunately, that message obviously was lost over the last 3 years, because coming back to this sequel now to a very different Britain that seems less tolerant. And the film still has the same message, obviously, in it, one of immigration and tolerance and acceptance and multicultural living, all very good and positive. But it's basically just more of the same, if not slightly better, I'd say. It's because it's got a really good villain. I think the villain in the form of Nicole Kidman in the first film wasn't as good as Hugh Grant, who's possibly delivering the performance of his career as Phoenix Buchanan, a washed-up actor who's basically Paddington's nemesis in this film. And he
is it based on his own experience in a washed-up actor?
Yeah. He's so funny in it, and just absolutely brilliant. And for God's sake, stay through the credits, because there's a sequence within halfway through the credits. It's absolute pure genius. So yes, I think it's a better film because it's got a better villain, and the plot's great. It's got some really good supporting characters. It's very, very funny, and lots of good slapstick and some really good sort of subtle jokes for the adults as well as good jokes for the kids. And overall, I thought it was as good as, if not slightly better than the first film. And Ben Whishaw. Because I remembered after I came out, I thought originally it was going to be Colin Firth that did the voice of Paddington, but they decided just before the film came out that it wasn't working because his voice was too recognisable, and they got Ben Whishaw to do it instead. And he's brilliant as the voice because he's got this strange combination of youth and experience and wisdom almost in the voice that really, really works with Paddington. And the animation's fantastic of the bear himself, and I absolutely loved it. So I highly recommend Paddington. I think Kamara gave it 10 out of 10, and I would be along similar grounds. I think 10
Really?
out of 10.
Bloody hellfire!
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, is there any ambiguous thank/f moments in this, or is that purely related to the advert?
Yes, that's only in the advert, which they played before the film started, and I've got to say, it sounds like "thank you" to me. So.
Oh right, okay.
They must have fixed it then.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably fixed it.
If you watch the YouTube version, it certainly does not say that. But then again, that could have been tampered with as well. You never know. The first film, Steve, I would say it was surprising and it was entertaining, but that's all it was, to be honest, in my opinion. So I'm really not getting this love fest for Paddington 2. I think both you and Kamari are off your nuts.
And it's a nice tight 90 minutes, no mucking about.
Well, there is that, yeah. We're getting to that age now, Steve, aren't we, where we start looking at the running times of films and thinking, oh, Christ, I can't be arsed with that, man. Oh, hour and a half, I'll go and see that.
Yeah, or if I'm getting a discount and like, watch something tonight, what's that then? 3 hours.
Why 80s films are brilliant. I mean, 80s films, if you went much beyond 95 minutes, you had something seriously important to say, or Arnie needed to kill a lot of people.
It wouldn't fit on a VHS otherwise, would it?
No, this is true. So,
I'm sure that wasn't the consideration, Mark, but yes, there is some truth.
No.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. 180. It was 180 minutes was the average sort of, and then you got 240 minutes, didn't you? After a few years.
We're back to VHS again.
Yep, sorry.
Cutting edge tech.
Seemingly, as we mentioned, in the 80s, I did finally get finished on Stranger Things 2. Is everybody else finished now?
Night.
Yeah, you got finished on it as well?
Last night.
Mr. Botwright?
I'm taking out my headphones.
You what?
What?
Taking out your headphones?
Yep, I don't want to hear.
No, we're not going to spoil it, don't worry. I'm just checking to see where everybody is with it.
I haven't started yet.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say anything specific, but there were quite a lot of plot holes I found.
Yes, there was some decision making. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, there were some things like, what? Anyway, yes, but it's still very good.
Let's just say that there was some issues that Steve had with Prometheus and Alien Covenant that could very well, his criticism could very well be applied to certain characters in Stranger Things. Would I be right in that, Steve?
I think there's one character who does something that I definitely wouldn't do.
Yes.
In the same circumstances.
Yes, we'll leave it at that. But I have to say, it lived up to expectations. It wasn't a disappointment. It wasn't weak. There was one episode which didn't run concurrently with the story and felt a bit odd and out of place. But I'm sure that come season 3, that will be explained. Yeah, I think they were setting up a different storyline there. But I've got to say, excuse me.
Yeah.
Oh, right, I thought somebody was riffed. Yeah, I've got to say, I thought the acting was absolutely superb. The kids are knocking it out of the park. If these kids do not go on and have long careers in acting, there's something wrong, because they are really hitting it out of the park.
Did you see how much they were growing up though during the course of the
it was quite funny. It was quite funny in that respect. And I also caught that documentary they were on about Spielberg. Caught up with that on Now TV. That was really entertaining as well, Steve. So thanks for that recommendation. That filled in 2.5 hours very nicely. Also caught up with the latest Family Guy. Have you seen it yet?
I watched one last night. That's the one where it's Peter's the pimp. That was
it's getting back on form, isn't it? It kind of, and I think the fact as well that what's happening in Hollywood right now, and the fact that Seth MacFarlane was dropping hints at what was going on a number of years ago in terms of some jokes within. I think people's attention's now turning back to Family Guy and thinking, what else is Seth MacFarlane telling us about what's going on in Hollywood?
I mean, obviously the one that still remains the most confusing is the Kendall Jenner, that sequence with a pre-Kendall Jenner. Apparently, it's a form of abuse to refer to someone in their old identity, but that just whether it's just the luckiest wild guess in the history of the universe or there was something else going on there, I don't know. That's very peculiar.
And most annoyingly, is
it not Caitlyn Jenner?
Oh, Caitlin. Yes, sorry. Kendall is one of the children, isn't it? I always get confused.
Isn't it?
Caitlin.
Yes.
Isn't it?
That's right.
I hate that I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And what's more, that probably removed a fact that you actually wanted to retain from your brain.
Yeah.
That's what happens these days. You know.
yeah. So, yes, I think it's getting back on form. Certainly, I don't know if people are watching this on ITV or on Fox. I've been watching Fox, so I'm assuming that they are completely up to date. Steve?
Yes, this is the new series, isn't it? The most 16th season, I believe. This is incredible.
Yeah, and I've got to say, it's back on form. I've watched all 4 episodes so far, and it's really good. And most annoyingly, I started getting into Westworld. Got up to episode 5, absolutely loving it. Yes, I know I'm miles behind everybody else, but
I don't care. I want more
Give me a
people on
break.
board with it because they are. It's tremendously expensive to make, and it just blew me away. I just thought it was absolutely
well, the
outstanding.
most annoying thing, Ed, is that I finished episode 5 and it's disappeared. It's gone now. It's no longer on Now TV.
Don't worry, it'll be back, Phil. Don't you worry about it. It'll pop back up again in a couple of months.
You can come down to mine and watch it as box sets.
Or you could just post your box set up to me. That'd be easier.
No. I mean,
He's
it's a
talking
Sky
about
box set.
All right.
Come to me, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hell of a round trip.
Bed
Although,
the new Mustang in.
I was just going to say, yeah, I probably need to do that. Yeah.
Steve will send you his disc, won't he?
No, I won't.
You're alone, you miserable git.
Solidarity, brother.
Okay, so that's Paddington 2. Films opening this Friday, Steve.
Yeah, yet another sequel, Daddy's Home 2, which is obviously the sequel to Daddy's Home. Which
I'm completely unaware of Daddy's Home. I've never heard of it. Tell me all
I've
about
got
it.
it on disc.
I'm sure
You
you have, because it
amazed me.
sounds like a really shite film and it's something that you would have on disc. I've never heard of it before, so please explain what the plot is.
You know why I bought it on Blu-ray? Because it had DTSX soundtrack back in the days when that was a big deal.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That played a big part in Daddy's Home, didn't it?
Daddy's Home, the premise is essentially that Will Ferrell is a stepfather to a kid. His wife's ex-husband turns up again after years of not being around, played by Mark Wahlberg. And obviously the two of them are trying to trade off, battle each other for the kids' attention. No, I didn't make it.
So this is a miss then at the cinema this week. We can miss this one.
Depends on whether you like Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell. In this version, in the sequel, their fathers turn up. So Mel Gibson is Mark Wahlberg's father, and John Lithgow is Will Ferrell's father, and they come up, and then there's more of the same basically. Yeah, I'm not going to be going to see the cinema.
It's only an hour and 40 minutes though.
It might be in Dolby Vision, though, Steve.
Yeah, we might like that'll happen.
With an Atmos soundtrack, which is going to make a huge difference to this type of film.
Yeah. So anyway, obviously the first one did well enough to warrant a sequel, but these days Mel Gibson will do anything for the money because his career's been.
He's now an honorary Scotsman, isn't he? So.
Well, yeah. Although I don't know, maybe he's more suited to leader of the Labour Party these days. It's hard to work out. But actually, do you know what?
I'd love to see that film, Ed. Mel Gibson is Jeremy Corbyn.
I will say, thus far, I mean, who knows where the Hollywood sex scandal is going to take us next? Thus far, Mel, I mean, he might be an angry, drunk racist, but thus far, he doesn't appear to have inappropriately touched anybody, except perhaps that traffic police lady who he called Sugar Tits.
Yeah, that wasn't his finest moment, was it?
Yeah, but it would appear that he kept his hands to himself.
Yes.
If we're in the new Hollywood, could this be the redemption of Mel Gibson?
It's getting so ridiculous that it's almost like one of those inserts that you would see in Family Guy or The Simpsons, where the executives in Hollywood just want to invent an editing machine that just removes actors in terms of their popularity at any given time.
When you start refilming sequences for a finished, completed film that's about to come out, spending a considerable amount of money to recast and refilm Kevin Spacey's part from All the Money in the World, that's a big decision to make. Because I mean, that's incredible that they were doing that with a film.
Yeah,
I mean,
but do you think some of that was marketing, though, Steve? Because nobody heard of this film.
Yeah, Ridley Scott directed it, but no one had heard of it. It was like, oh, what? And
On
I
the
don't
plus
think
side,
people
though-
are not going to go and see it because Kevin Spacey's in it, are they? Really? Or is that going to?
On the plus side, I hadn't started watching House of Cards yet, and if they re-edit that, I think I'll get through it.
I'd tell you what, a
Couple of
re-edit of
minutes.
House of Cards without Kevin Spacey would be an interesting experience, because how they're planning on doing season 6 without him, God only knows. Because I mean,
Well,
he is the main character.
Didn't you see that tweet? It was referencing that Simpsons episode with Poochie, and it's like, I have to go. My people need me. Frank Carwood died on the way back to his home planet. It amused me anyway. That's because I'm a bad person.
Yeah. No, it's almost like one of these cutaways that they do in these comedies. Right. What do we need to cover now? Blu-ray releases this week, Steve.
Blu-rays this week, we've got Spider-Man Homecoming. That's coming out on Blu-ray and Ultra HD Blu-ray as well from Sony. I really enjoyed the film at cinema. I've got the Ultra HD Blu-ray. It looks and sounds fantastic. It's got Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision. I think it's a cracking film. I think they did a really good job with this one in terms of rebooting yet again Spider-Man.
It was all right. It was
good villain. I had a good villain. Could have done with being a little bit shorter, as all films could these days. But it's a good disc, and if you're a fan, definitely worth picking up.
I've got to say, in terms of a superhero movie, it's one of the better bad guys, more believable bad guys.
Yeah, he's got a good backstory and motivation, and I think that Michael Keaton plays bad really well. I think he's got the kind of slightly mad look in his eyes that really. The scene when they were talking in the back, it's just talking. The best scene in the film is just the two of them talking in a car. And there's some proper acting going on in there, and it's really good. But it's funny, it's entertaining. What more do you want from a comic book film, really? We've also got The Big Sick, which is a comedy about an Indian guy, how he met his wife and the circumstances, and dealing with her parents' reaction to him being in India and that sort of thing, which I've got to say looks very funny in the trailers. Also, we've got The Beguiled, which is Sofia Coppola's remake of, it was done originally by Don Siegel and Clint Eastwood in the early 70s. A tale of a Union soldier who's injured and is being cared for in a girls' school in the South, and then trouble ensues. I've also got Jabberwocky, which was the first film that Terry Gilliam directed on his own. And actually, I quite like this one. I think it's really funny. And I'm looking forward to this. This is a Criterion Collection release, so you've got plenty of extras and a cracking new image from a 4K remaster. And finally, Desert Hearts, which again is another Criterion release, mid-80s lesbian love story. It was quite a big deal at the time, back when that sort of thing was considered to be quite risque.
I went to see mid-80s lesbian love story, support the Foo Fighters. They're a great band.
Yes, Ultra HD Ultra HD Blu-ray news, really. So Terminator 2, that's getting released on the 4th of December in the UK, on the 26th of December in the US. As far as I'm aware, it's the same release. I don't know why it's been delayed. I don't know why it's been delayed, because it doesn't seem to be any different. And disappointingly, no DTSX soundtrack either, which was definitely mentioned initially when this was first announced. So
yeah, was that there when the film was originally released, Steve?
No, not in 1991.
No, I didn't think so. So we'll be getting it close to how it was supposed to be heard, yeah.
Oh, you get a 7-channel mix that will certainly be as it was intended to be heard at the time. I'm still going to get the 3D disc when it comes out on the 4th, just to add to my T2 collection, to be perfectly honest.
But your LG doesn't have 3D.
Nope, the projector does.
Oh yeah, projector. Yeah, forgetting about that.
I'll probably pick up the Blu-ray, the Ultra HD Blu-ray, rather, when we're in the States.
Well, I've still got it in order, so I'm hoping it'll come through.
But with the Christmas post and everything, it probably wouldn't arrive until we were about to leave, so I might just pick it up while we're there.
Yeah, I've seen it. So.
Also announced in January the 9th, so I'll probably buy this while we're in the States as well, is It, which is coming out on Ultra HD Blu-ray with Dolby Vision. That's the first Warner's title where they've officially announced Dolby Vision is going to be part of the disc. There is Dolby Vision on Westworld, but that was never actually mentioned officially. It's just not even mentioned on the packaging. It just was a bit of a surprise when you put the disc in. And also coming out in February, Hell or High Water is getting a release on Ultra HD Blu-ray again with Dolby Vision. So Dolby Vision, again, more titles coming out there. Okay,
so that's UHD Blu-rays and stuff. So TV-wise, obviously we've mentioned what we've been catching up on, but the new series of Gas Monkey is out, Ed, Discovery, Monday night. Have you been watching it?
No, I haven't, and I believe Wheeler Dealers might have lurched into life as well without me noticing. I haven't checked. I'm just so deep into MasterChef at the moment. not literally, you understand. But that's my major television, and I've got at the moment. I have including my own 3, there's £23,000 worth of record players and record player ancillaries in my house at the moment. So I'm spending quite a lot.
Take note.
If they can run off with some of it, then I'm not going to. If they're strong enough to do that, I'm not going to stop them. I have to admit, I've been spending a lot of time listening to music. It seems only fair with the amount of stuff here. So
that's fair enough. Did you ever catch Garage Rehab when it was on?
I didn't, but that's mainly because every time it got posted on either Twitter or Instagram, it basically just provoked a level of fury from people going, "This is absolute shite," and it's like, well, if it was 1 or 2 people, that.
I've got to say, it was entertaining, but not in the way that I thought it was going to be entertaining. It was I've watched the whole season because again, it's on Now TV on the catch up. Watched the whole season 1. The most amusing thing about it was the people on it, because basically the premise, for people that don't know, it's a bit like one of these makeover shows, but instead of making over a house and stuff, Richard Rollins goes into a garage that's underperforming, not making any money, close to closing. They're usually utter shitholes with just junk everywhere and all the rest of it, and no flow to it, and not getting the type of work in that it should be. And he invests a couple of $100,000. When I say invest, he loans it to them. And they do up he becomes the boss for a week. They do it all up. They get the new stands in and all the rest of it, lifts and all that kind of thing, and create a viable business and then hand it back to them. But these people are people that I wouldn't even lend a fiver to. Never mind a couple of $100,000. And that's the most entertaining bit of the whole thing. Is these people? They are just stereotypical Middle America, basically. And I found that more entertaining than the rest of the show, to be honest. And the fact that you just know that a lot of these people, the businesses are going to fail, because they are the weakest link, basically. So I found it quite entertaining.
I mean, it's the same fundamental issue that underpinned certainly the earlier series of Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, certainly before he went to the States and they overdrammed it. That ultimately a number of these people physically weren't set up to be in business. They weren't people that, as you say, you wouldn't trust them with loose change you found in your back pocket, let alone a meaningful investment, because you could give them the resources of Deutsche Bank and they'd still manage somehow to lose it all and be in debt within 3 years. But the problem is that those people in turn make for quite compelling television. So it's the same way that with MasterChef the Professionals, we're halfway through the group stages, and it's a balance between finding some people who are impressive, talented, and will go on to be really compelling finalists, but showing just enough people who are the human a physical manifestation of the Dunning-Kruger effect. To make that appealing, when they turn up for the skills test, it's like, make this. It's like, oh, I've never done that before. Well, we're going to watch you do it for 20 minutes in glorious high definition. So
that's who's doing cod cheeks from the inside.
Yes, I have to say I was quite disappointed with the cod's challenge, because I was hoping that someone was going to use the eye as a garnish or go for the brain, but Temple of Doom style. In many ways, people screwed up the pasta thing the following day.
Yeah, including the Italian woman. You thought would that be?
Yeah, that wasn't her finest hour. Although that episode with the South African bloke who did a perfectly good skills test, but then decided to do a signature dish in MasterChef with no actual cooking.
Yeah.
Oh, that is pretty much the textbook definition of binning it. So yeah, but anyway, I know that Phil doesn't watch it and finds all of this tiresome.
I've never understood cookery stuff because I just get hungry watching it and I want to go and eat. So that's why
as I said before, I take a special delight in eating processed shit in front of MasterChef Professionals. So on Tuesday night I had a supermarket pizza. Wednesday night I did actually cook, in fairness.
I was going to say, Ed, what happened to this healthy living lifestyle you were going to pursue for Vegas?
I'm still losing weight. I just, as I say, I had earlier in the day I had a bowl of vegetable soup, so my calories across the day still pretty low.
Well, you see, I put £3 on.
I don't know. I don't know what to say to that. The biggest problem that you've got is that, as I say, for me, my single greatest weakness was beer. That was where an enormous amount of my calorie intake came from, and removing the greater part of that, I keep having to drill new holes in my belt. It's quite impressive.
Yeah. So I don't know what went wrong with that. Well, I do know what went wrong with that one. Eating the wrong stuff, like freshly made lasagna, Steve, in London, and stuff like that, and takeaways and so on. So I've kind of fallen off the rails recently, and gone back to my old ways for the last couple of weeks. But it's that's finishing now, and back to the diet again.
This ends now.
Yes, Mark, any decent TV that we can watch? Because obviously we're not watching any decent TV.
No, Stranger Things is all I've been watching, really. Yeah.
There's a couple of cracking ones on iPlayer, if anyone's interested. Snowfall has been very good.
Was that BBC Two drug dealing series?
Yeah. Crime drama.
Good. I've got all that in the TV, actually.
Yeah, absolutely excellent, because it's all about the kind of cocaine explosion in 80s Los Angeles. And so it ties into kind of the CIA, into illegal wars, that kind of thing. So it's very kind of multi-layered. And there's also a cracking documentary series still on iPlayer about the Vietnam War.
Oh, that is fantastic.
Which is, I genuinely think it's up there with World at War. I know that sounds, extreme praise, but it is so in depth. It's
who's doing the voiceover, the narration? It's not Orson Welles.
Not going to be Laurence Olivier.
No, it's Peter Coyote. Yeah.
Oh well, yeah, good.
But the soundtrack is brilliant. The in-depth interviews with the soldiers from all sides, and just the level of depth they go into with regards to the background to the war and that kind of thing, the French colonialism, all the kind of things that you never learnt at school. I just found it massively informative, really good.
It was never a British conflict, so it was never really broadcast over here, was it? Really, in terms of they didn't really go into any depth at the time, and since in terms of history. And I don't think what I know up to now about the Vietnam War was what I picked up through other cultures, education, Platoon and films and that kind of thing. But it's interesting that it does go into the depth it does go into. I mean, I've only managed one episode and I fell asleep, but I'll give it another go.
It's Ken Burns that's behind it, isn't it? Well done, Ken.
Yeah, well done. Anything else interesting that we need to be watching? Because we know about Vietnam, because Mark, you haven't been on the podcast, but Steve's already, been banging on about it for weeks now. So I think most
obviously
people.
There's the Peaky Blinders new season of that's kicked off. Yeah. Now I haven't been watching that, but my dad, who doesn't watch a huge amount of television and is hugely reluctant to commit to series, is a fanatical fan of it, and that it's quite high praise. He has reasonable taste in this regard, so I can only assume it must be pretty damn good. Although all of those Birmingham accents, no offense to people from that particular part of the world listening to this podcast, it's just not necessarily something I want lots of on television. Sorry.
I've watched the first two seasons and they were fantastic. I'm a season behind though, so I haven't started on 4 yet.
I really struggled with it. I find that it's the production values kind of draw you in, but I just find some of the script writing and some of the kind of characterizations turns into kind of swaggering, kind of macho stereotypes, and just a couple of them just look like they're kind of like, I don't know, young hipsters playing at gangsters or something.
It's got a bit of the Western about it, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. And then some, the music is decent, but sometimes it is quite jarring, the kind of old and new. It kind of, certain scenes play out like like they're kind of directed by someone who's doing a music video, and they just think, what do we need here? More slow-mo walking, But yeah, production values are absolutely, off the scale. It looks fantastic, and the cinematography is great.
Wait till you see the slow-mo Ed and Steve walking shots from CES.
Oh,
the cinematography is going to blow you away.
I'm waiting for the drone shots as well.
And what's the soundtrack
There's
going
no
to be
drone
to it?
shots. There's no drone
Oh,
shots.
it's not coming to the desert with us.
No, well, you're not allowed to fly them in the desert. You'll get shot out of the sky.
Okay.
There was. Did you not see it last time we went through the desert? There were signs everywhere saying no drones.
I didn't see that. I can't remember. I remember I was drinking those enormous cans of Mexican lager.
Yes, and you were such a nice person as well.
Well, I'm not saying that, obviously I have drastically cut back on my alcohol consumption, but if we can get to a filling station, I won't buy the one with the tomato in because that was horrendous, but we'll pick up some more giant cans of Mexican beer for the event.
Okay, and on that bombshell, that's it for this week's AVForums podcast. By the way, Amazon have paid $250 million for the rights of Lord of the Rings TV, but I didn't think it was worth talking about, really. Lord of the Rings on TV? Nah, we can do away with that. Steve Withers.
Deactivating instant kill.
Mark Hodgkinson.
I'm nothing without this suit.
Ed Selley.
I'm just kidding. I don't care. Bye.
And Mark Botwright.
I just want to thank you for letting me be a part of your journey.
Again, outstanding acting. Well done, people. And don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums for latest reviews, news and video. And of course, leave us a 5-star rating, but only on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. I said that wrong, but who cares? I'm Phil Hinton. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you for episode 202 next week.